right, today we've got Todd Walsh, voice of the Coyotes. Todd is taking time out of his day to join us and talk to us a little bit about his life in the Coyotes. But first, Todd, I'd like to ask you how this even came about with you coming up on this podcast, this brand new podcast. Guess two of two. So we're flying by the seat of our pants here. Theo Fleury was number one. You're
Wow.
number you're
Oh,
number
okay.
you're number two. So why don't you tell everyone how you came about even coming on this podcast?
Well, first of all, I this is really cool because I feel like I have two new friends, and at my age, I don't think you cultivate new friends. I look
Okay.
forward to meeting you in person, Ryan, but I got a cold call from a woman named Tara Buchanan. And I have the transcript of the call here. I don't want to bore you with it, but it went 48 seconds and then it literally just stopped. But she was talking about a charity event, trying to raise some money for a charity as well as a travel hockey team. And I didn't know who she was, really didn't know what she was talking about, but there was just something in her voice that told me that hockey mattered. So I
Mhm.
decided to call her back. She didn't believe it was me. I guess she got my number from an ex-Coyote employee that wrote it on a cocktail napkin
Napkin.
at a bagel store. And I did tell her that it's been a long time since anyone's ever written my name on a cocktail napkin. So I just figured this, you know what, why not? And now I'm sitting here talking to you. That was a week ago.
Here we are. And you know, it's funny because Tara is helping me with this charity. Lack Can't Score. It's a charity event with me and Eddie Lack. And she has this way of pulling people in and she says, I'm so bad. I'm nobody. I'm not cool. And I said, Tara, you're everybody's hockey mom. You're the ultimate hockey mom. And that resonates with everybody, and
Right.
she has this way of connecting with people instantly. So it's
Yeah,
really cool.
I think by the end of the call, truth be told, both of us, we were both pretty emotional. But I don't know. I literally, she could walk into my house right now and I wouldn't know who she was. But I basically bled for her a little bit because she did for me. And the genesis of this is hockey. And that's why I did it. So, hi,
I
it's
love
nice
it.
to
Hi,
meet
hi,
you.
Todd. Yes, you too. Yeah, we're gonna have some fun, and I agree with you.
Okay.
It's all coming together, and at the end, I'll share a little story for me of how it's all came together with this too. So we're gonna
Okay.
get right into it, Todd. So before we get into the Coyotes, how are you doing right now?
I'm doing good. I know why you asked that question, but I'm actually good. It's summertime. I am gainfully employed again. I'm in
Okay.
the middle of my Diamondback season. I'm not on this particular road trip. And you know what? I'm gonna go a little obtuse if you don't mind.
No, we'll go anywhere and everywhere.
Okay. The gift, one of the gifts of losing my winter occupation, my job with the Coyotes, is that I got to spend more time with the Diamondbacks and at the dawn's breaking light in spring training. And it's unbelievable to say this. I've been doing Diamondbacks games since 2001. So 24 years, and I've never covered a spring training
Oh
because my
wow.
my job is just for always going like this. I used to joke, but it's not a joke that I was doing, it's kind of like a 13-month calendar year. So I was always late to hockey. And on the other end, when baseball, it was always chasing my tail. But this time, finally, I was able to go over to spring training and watch pitchers and catchers that day and sort of see how this team was forming. And the real gift for me was a recognition of something I always thought. And I just talked to Tori Lavelle about this last week in the dugout in San Francisco. I said, normally this is around the time that I arrive at a baseball season in
Oh
mid-May.
wow.
And I've always thought that I was arriving at the right time because teams at that point are starting to embrace or figure out their collective identity. It changes every year. You can say you're going to be a certain way in spring training, but that doesn't mean you just run out of the gate with it. And he looked at me and he said, "It's right about now. We're trying to figure everything out." And I heard him sort of regurgitate that the other day on an interview, and I knew that conversation resonated. So that's kind of the gift that I got is that despite the fact that I was lighting money on fire every day without a job, but I
Hey,
was
I've been
able,
there. I have been
yeah,
there.
oh yeah, I know I am not alone. But it's been really fascinating to realize that I'm not broken down mentally and physically like I always was at the start of baseball season after doing
Hmm.
82 hockey games, and it kind of hit the ground running that way. It's been a real gift, and I've kind of fallen back in love with a sport that I played my whole life. I was just everything was just cut in half for me doing two sports in one calendar year. It's not an easy gig.
No,
So
I can't
that's
imagine.
the one gift of when you say how you're doing. That's how I'll answer that
Okay,
question.
I love it. I love it. All right. No, that's a great answer. And I'm a big believer recently that you never know why something happened till way later sometimes. Like
Oh,
it can be, it can seem horrible.
yep,
One of the worst things I ever went through in my life has ended up 8 years later being the best blessing of my life because I wouldn't be
sure.
doing what I'm doing now. And
Yep.
and the 8 years between has not been roses,
No, no.
But now on the other side, it was the biggest blessing I ever had, and at the time was the worst thing that ever happened. So,
I've lived it. It seems like, the sportscasting business is such a cutthroat business, and I have so many peers along the way that have had adversity hit them. I've had it hit me, and I've said to many people along the way, what you're about to experience is clarity at some point, hopefully, but also, this will date how old I am, but you're also going to get a Rolodex, and I don't mean a watch. I'm talking about the old
mhm.
address book
Yeah,
of,
where you flip through, yeah.
yeah, of who's who in your life, who's going to be there when it really matters. You're going to find out real quick. So, and I always thought that those truths lead you to what you just talked about, that
Mhm.
moment where you go, oh, okay. It's just getting through that is the hard part.
And I don't know if your experience was like mine when, I mean, I lost everything, and the people that showed up, if you would have told me beforehand, those were the people that were going to show up immediately after, I probably would have told you were crazy. Like,
Really?
and a lot of the people that I thought were, not all, but a lot of the people that I thought were my closest friends
Yeah.
were not immediately after. And it was that part was fascinating for me. Not all of them, but it
Yeah.
definitely, like you said, you find out who's in your corner when you're at the bottom, not at the
And
top.
absolutely. And I used to pride myself on being that person to the person that took the hit.
Oh.
I got a lot of that back to me, um, shockingly, from some people one of them in particular said to me, you know why I'm telling you this, whatever he was telling me. And it didn't register. And then he reminded me of the day that he got fired. And I remember calling him. Then I remember
Mm,
going, oh, okay. But man, I know exactly what you're saying. And it's really interesting. I also realized, and I think this comes with age and maybe a little bit of wisdom and some scar tissue, that there were some people that I expected to be right there and they weren't. And as time wore on, I realized it was very hard for them. It was
hmm.
awkward for them.
Yep.
Um, and they didn't know what to do or say. And they had advanced in certain things that probably made them feel uncomfortable around me
Very
because
true.
I didn't advance in that particular area. So it's all fascinating to me. I mean,
Okay.
it's life.
Yes, and here we are.
Yeah.
So, Todd, if I gave you the mic and no time limit, but we do have a time limit, so we can't
Okay.
go no time limit. What would you
Okay.
say to Arizona hockey fans today?
Wow. Well, I hope I've said it enough over 27 or 28 years. But the first thing I'd say is hi. I've missed you. I haven't seen
Yeah,
you.
we miss you.
Yeah, I haven't seen you guys in a while. But I also want to say thank you to those that have reached out and continue to reach out. Man, I can't, it boggles my mind the places that I've been since that day in April a couple of years ago when the team left. I'm talking baseball cities or maybe a concert getaway out of state or whatever. And people have come up to me and said what they wanted to say about that night, that broadcast, that last game, the loss of the team, what hockey meant to them. And I mean, I just absorb it and I don't really know what to say except thank you. But I have a short story. This is
Oh yeah, no, I love it.
my favorite random moment And the guy that did this bumped into me a few months ago and told, because I've told this story on the air, I think somewhere, but I was at the Trans-Siberian Orchestra concert at in downtown, whatever America West Arena has become. And I'd never seen Trans-Siberian Orchestra because the Coyotes were always on the road because they used to play at their venues. So I was really excited. I'm like, I'm Mr. Christmas. I love Christmas holidays and music and the whole fanfare. So we go, it's hilarious. We go to the Trans-Siberian Orchestra, and right before the lights go down for the show, I'm like, I mean, I gotta get something to eat. So I take the order, I go down, I grab the food, and I'm walking back. Now the lights are going down. The concert is literally starting, and I'm not in my seat. And this guy comes up to me and he says, hey, can I show you something? And I'm like, I'm holding food. And I look at him like, okay. And he starts talking about the Coyotes. And we walk about a quarter of the bowl away from my elevator. And he says, you see these escalators? All you gotta do is blow them out. You just blow this side of the rink out or this arena out, and you'll have yourself a rink. And I went, oh, okay.
Wow.
And that's the kind of stuff that you remember forever. So that my first part is hi. The second part is thank you, and it's the eternal thank you for listening to what we did, absorbing what we did, listening to the stories, and tracking the year by year story of a hockey team. And I've always felt like my job as the host is to bring you in, but I'm also asking you to make an investment to the team that we're broadcasting. And it's not just a financial investment on tickets or cable television or streaming services. It's an emotional investment. And I ask that a lot in many different ways, and I still do that with the Diamondbacks. And um, I feel like that, and it just goes back to my youth as a sports fan, that that's the greatest part of the sporting experience is going along for the ride, being armed with information and knowledge, and you start to fall for a team in a certain way that only sports can do. And it's not always about championships. Not everybody wins it. It's such a random
No.
thing. It's about that journey. And the one thing that I learned over the years is that winning and losing, I think, are kind of like an equal emotion. And it's kind of like love and anger, love and hate. They're emotions.
Mm-hmm.
So I just thank fans for listening to that and hopefully gaining that power and knowledge and sort of the impetus to keep going. So the fact that anyone watched or listened is blows my mind, and I'm so proud of it, and I'm thankful for it.
Well, I'll tell you, specifically, there are a few coaches that I coach with, right? This year I'm coaching 8U, which is my youngest kid. He's a goalie. Um, and a couple of the coaches grew up here. And when I told them that I was talking to you, it blew their mind because they grew up. Well, no, because Todd, they grew up here as young kids and they've only heard your voice. And so for them, this is hugely emotional too. I know they're watching. One of them's Tara's husband, Kenny. He was blown away. So I know they want to say thank you. So now we're going to get into a little bit of the nitty gritty, man. You've been the voice and the soul of this franchise for decades. What does it feel like, or what did it feel like watching it leave?
Um, can I answer that in a roundabout?
You can, yes, absolutely.
And I want to say something to what I just experienced. The only thing I allowed myself this off season or season was to work with Arizona high school hockey and Kenny McGinley. And they called me
Kenny.
much like Tara did, a complete cold call. I've known Kenny and his family. And he said, I'm sure you're probably busy, but we're putting this commercial together for the championships. Would love to have you be a part of it. I was like, busy? Um, but I actually did to them what I did to you guys, which is I said I would like to do a little more. And I wound up working the broadcast for the championship game
It's awesome.
and the semifinals when I was there. And I felt the same thing that you just told me, which was people were coming up to me and saying the same thing. And I just don't allow myself to be that person but I now know, I understand because I saw it in their eyes. I saw it in the coach's eyes when I walked by, and a few of the kids came up to me, and it's hard to accept that I've had a job that long that people paid attention to. And I think this is my therapy. That this is like an ongoing therapy session that I just keep hearing that what you just said, and it's amazing. So that said, I have in my hand because I keep everything. That's funny. This was one of my worksheets that I starts out as a blank piece of
Okay.
paper that I bring to every game. And in the third period of the last game, I asked our producer if I could just do a laundry list of names and thank as many fellow broadcasters as I could. So I take it in a weird way when you say that I'm the voice of the Coyotes, because that's not me. I'm the host. The voice of the Coyotes, in my opinion, are the guys that actually call the game. So can I run through this? This is what I did on
Yes,
the air.
yes, absolutely.
I have to start with the late Doug McLeod, the first television voice who just passed away. I wouldn't be on television if not for Doug McLeod. He implored that I do it. Charlie Simmer was the analyst. Talked to him to this day. Barry Buttel was the first host on Fox Sports Arizona. He left, which opened up that position for me. He has come all the way back. He's got a great thing going at Grand Canyon. Kirk Keelback and Steve Conroy. Uh, they were the first radio broadcast team. A guy named Nick Simonetta was the first pregame host on radio. Tom Curvers, my best friend in my life, who just passed away, was our second analyst on the radio. Bob Heathouse, of course, became the radio play-by-play for 1,000 years. I love him to death. Jim Johnson was an analyst. Louis DeBrusque, Tyson Nash, Dave Strader, and Darren Pang had a wonderful run here. Matt McConnell came in and did the impossible, which was to replace Dave Strader. Dave was kind enough to let me do a posthumous induction speech at the Hockey Hall of Fame
Wow.
when he got the Foster Hewitt Award. I sat at table one with Gary Bettman, Bill Daly, and Lanny McDonald, and I was the last speaker, and it was the hardest thing I've ever done in my life, but I'll never forget him calling me and saying, I got good news and bad news. I just got named the Foster Hewitt Award recipient. The bad news is I'm not going to be alive to get it, and I want you to speak. I mean,
Hmm. Yeah.
Luke Lipinski, the mainstay on the radio, Jody Jackson, of course, on television. And I can't walk away without mentioning Paul Bissonnette, who was the biggest star in the television universe, who did an interview with me about his own underwear that was stolen. And that kind of started it all. So that's how, when you say face of or voice of the Coyotes, those are the guys that I think of. But your question was how it felt when the team walked away. Is that,
Yeah, I mean, more or less.
yeah. I've tried to answer this 1,000 times in my head. And I think the one thing that I think about what that night, when I project myself, is that I was numb to it, just like everybody in the organization that had been there for a while, because there had been so many stops and starts to this team potentially leaving. I think it was year two when there were members of the staff that flew to Portland to look for homes because they were going to Portland.
Wow.
I remember the crawl that came on Channel 12. I think it was Mark Curtis that broke the story at season's end. It broke as they were closing out their newscast, so he couldn't get on the air, and they did a crawl. It's the Coyotes aren't leaving. And I called Keith Kachuk on a Sunday afternoon, and I'll never forget him saying, "We're not going anywhere." But it kept happening. I mean, Winnipeg, Quebec, Winnipeg, over and over. I mean, 1,000 different places, Kansas City. So I was numb to it. And then Reality Bell hit so late. I knew it was coming. There was a moment a week before it finally broke when we were on the road in Canada, and one of the assistant coaches got on the bus, the team bus, and sat down, stood up, turned around, and looked at everybody and said to everybody and nobody, "This team's moving to Utah, and we can't stop it." And he turned around and sat down.
Wow.
So, getting to your question though, I all of those things were like, I don't know, they were just always a part of the aura of this team. And when I walked out to my car, I remember thinking, this didn't have to happen. How did this happen? Why did this happen? And it's happened. They're done. They're gone. And I remember driving home going, oh man. And the thing that I still think about to this day is all the summers of angst that I mean, I would have. And then you're talking to me, and I could speak to so many other people, but it was never like this secure feeling. Hey, next year we're going to do this, this, and this. It just always felt like we're on quicksand.
Mhm.
And so I just had a whole fleet of emotions that didn't really sink in until I started to look at my phone over the next 72 hours. And I went, oh man, they're gone.
Wow. Whew. Yeah,
It's a long answer. Sorry.
no, that's a lot to unpack. And I mean, I didn't grow up here. I grew up in British Columbia, but all my boys have grown up here, and it was a lot, you know.
Yep.
Yeah. And it's kind of the same thing. We even as fans kind of felt like I had season tickets for years, and it was always kind of in the back of your mind because you hear all the chatter online. People, for me, people from Canada, friends and family, hey, they can't support the team. Why are they there? And it was just always, even as a fan, you were kind of on unsteady ground. And I think that one thing that a lot of people don't understand, though, what came with that was a loyalty that a lot of teams don't have. Like if you run into somebody who is a diehard Coyotes fan, it's a little different, I find. Like there is a camaraderie, however you there's a connection there that is different than me. I'm a Bruins fan. Don't hate me, but different than me running into a Bruins fan. It just is. And I think when people, I mean, I remember when they left here, and we're gonna get off the weeds for a second here, but when I would get angry because people would be like celebrating it, and I was like, you're celebrating. There's people's lives that are being changed here in a negative way, and again, I'm happy for the community that got it, okay, for those people specifically, because it is doing a good thing there. But what a lot of people in other areas didn't realize that we're kind of like, yay, it finally happened. Like it wasn't affecting you in Toronto. It wasn't affecting you in Vancouver, but it directly affected a lot of people here. Sorry, I'm getting a little frustrated even with that because I haven't had a chance to talk about that, but I would get into arguments with people. I'd be like you're not seeing it from the human side. You're seeing it from just the sports side, which is a human side, right? Like that's why we love sports. So,
Mhm. You brought up, you just struck a chord because for years and years and years, I was always defending the honor of hockey in Arizona, and I took it personally, just like you have.
hmm
And off the top of my head, I remember going into Greensboro when Carolina played in Greensboro, and you could count the fans on two hands. Same thing when they got to Raleigh before they won and started to be a force. I remember going to Florida on those games from if we went Miami to Tampa or Tampa to Miami, I mean, there just wasn't anybody at games. Talk about what happened in Atlanta. I also remember nights in places that would shock you.
hmm
The, the Staples Center was a mausoleum. There was nobody at the United Center. So for fans to sit there north of the border and take pot shots because their grandparents winter in Arizona and they went up and got a Vancouver Canucks Coyotes ticket at the window on the glass the day of the
yep.
game was it was just
Y-
yeah, it was just not accurate and in terms of the scope of the rest of the issues that were going on around the league. I always said I don't care who shows up at Coyote games. I hope, I remember when Winnipeg came back into the league and they, of course, opened in Arizona or one of their first games. And I couldn't wait for the crowd because I knew it was going to be split. And the players love that. I mean, the players absolutely love that. I would rather go have, you know, fans of the opposing team just to light a fire in the rink. We saw that at Mullet Arena. It was
hmm
amazing. So, anyways, I didn't mean to divert you on that, but
No, you're fine, Todd, and that's a huge point because as someone who's a lifelong hockey fan and played hockey and has been to a lot of rinks, I mean, I'll even say like the United Center in Chicago, there was a long like there like so, you're talking some of the and this is not just in the United States, mind you. There's arenas in Cal or in Canada that did the exact same thing from the time the Coyotes were here, but the spotlight always got shone on this community partially because so many people come here to watch games because it's a beautiful place to watch a game. And
yeah,
they would talk, and I had friends that would say they'd go back and they go, "Oh, I got last minute tickets for you can get one ticket for a Canucks game, and I got four on the glass." And
yeah.
they would just like spread that, and I'd be like, you know, it's like that in other places too. You just
Yep.
don't go there because it's freezing cold, you
And
know?
the other thing is that all the places that we mentioned, from the Staples Center to the United Center, I remember Ottawa was there was nobody at those games. The Florida teams, um, they all figured it out. They all had
Mm.
great management or great ownership or a combination of both and great drafts, and they all have Stanley Cups.
There's
You know,
that.
there is that. I mean, hey, look, I still can't believe, and before McKinnon finally did it in Colorado, that the Avalanche games became a mausoleum. And I
Hmm.
mean, that was mind-boggling to me. It's just the Coyotes got that rap and it never ever went away. And then the instability of the ownership, the league taking over the team, they were the ones that couldn't get it done. I think the biggest slap, though, in hindsight, was that Vegas appeared in the desert
Oof.
and
True.
they did it right
Right away.
and right away. And
Right away.
oh, you're kidding me.
You guys couldn't have waited 10 years. Like,
Yeah, I
you had
know.
to do it right away and be
Right
good
away.
right away.
Right
Yeah.
away. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah,
Oh,
probably an only 5 hour drive made it look a
yeah.
little poorly for the Coyotes. Well,
Yes. Yes.
so you've seen the highs, which I would, the whiteouts, the Kachina Magic, and the
Yep.
heartbreak. What moments stick with you the most?
I wrote some down because I just wanted to process this because this is cathartic for me. You mentioned the whiteouts. One of my first favorites was the thing that we called the doghouse, and that was my radio station when I was working for KDKB and we did their games. We decided to turn the obstructive view seats into the best seats in the house
Mm.
and roll the dice and put concerts up there and discounted tickets and gave t-shirts away. And that was long before you saw live music at sporting events, and we were ahead of
Oh,
the curve.
wow.
So that's a personal favorite of mine. But you mentioned the whiteouts, the Game 7 loss to Anaheim in Anaheim. I mean, untold story. We're leaving Anaheim after leading that series, and we're on the runway, leaving Orange County, rolling down the runway. The first year, first team, season just ended, and they slam on the brakes, and we skid and almost go off the runway. And the pilot comes down and says, the hydraulic light came on. So not only did the team just suffer this gut-wrenching loss, but we're stranded. And the mechanic that came to fix the plane went to the wrong airport. So we're on this plane for hours. And I just remember the conveyor belt car came up to the plane. We opened the door and cases of beer just kept coming up the back of the plane. It's got to be in my book if I ever write. The St. Louis series in year three, that to me is the toughest loss I've ever experienced in my 38 years of broadcasting when they lost game seven in
Mhm.
overtime of a scoreless game. I do have some items from Todd's garage. Here is Jeremy Roenick's mask that he willed to me going
Wow.
seven. I did a story on this, that whole experience, and I went up to Stan Wilson and I said, "Can you tell me how this mask came to be?" He goes, "Oh, it's somewhere in one of these rooms." So we walked all around the arena and he opened a couple of doors and he found it and he gave it to me and I used it as a prop when Coyotes inducted Jeremy into the Ring of Honor and he told me to keep it. Um, I think of that. I think of Keith Kachuk with a hat trick on Thanksgiving night in the earliest years. I think of Jeremy Roenick with back-to-back hat tricks. I think of those earliest teams. I've called them hockey pioneers. They were a swashbuckling group. There was
Hmm.
nothing like being around them. The level of comedy would have blown your mind. I could still see Dallas Drake with two tampons up his nose trying to play with a broken nose.
Oh,
Oh,
man.
let's see. How about this? I brought this. I still have a puck from Prague. I can't believe we were able to go to
Wow.
to watch a couple of games. We saw Mike Gardner score his 700th goal. Think about that. 700th goal happened in that first year. I think it was the first year. I'm not done. I'm not done. The Western Conference. Um,
I remember that one.
I I will never forget this because I still believe that if they didn't have a lengthy delay between the finals, excuse me, the semis to the finals, I think they would have given the Kings a run for their money. But
Hmm.
Mike Smith was just a little off. he couldn't sustain what he was doing. But there was a moment in the downtime between that series with Nashville and the Kings where the Coyotes were invited to a D-backs game. And unbeknownst to them, when they got there, the entire Arizona Diamondbacks team had made up Coyotes shirts and they wore them for batting practice.
Oh
And
wow.
the Coyotes were treated like kings by the baseball team in town. And that was a shift in the paradigm of that relationship between those two teams. And I'll never forget it. And I remember going out to dinner one night between those series. Somebody recognized me and came up to me and started talking about the Coyotes in May.
Versus.
In May.
Hmm.
And Luis Gonzalez sent me pictures of when the Coyotes were having playoff games. He would drive his car to his kids' baseball games, and he had a flat screen TV in the back of his car, and they would put the Coyote games on so everybody in the Little League field knew what was going on. I'll never ever forget that. I won't forget finally winning a playoff series and covering it in Chicago. We all went out on Rush Street and came back at 2 in the morning, 3 in the morning. We're in the elevator and the door opens up in the middle of our way to our rooms, and it's Mikkel Boedker with a ping pong paddle in his hand, covered in sweat, wearing sweats. He had just scored two of the biggest goals in Coyote history. It's 2 o'clock in the morning and he's playing ping pong. I mean, I don't know. These are just random memories. My favorite memory of all time, though, on the ice, it remains Brian Boucher and his shutout streak. It's still the
Wow.
most amazing story. A guy that was the third string goalie that wasn't even practicing with the team a month earlier, and then to see him do what he did. And Ryan, I'll tell you that in the time before or after the game in Washington and before the game in Minnesota when he broke the record, we were sitting on the team bus at the arena in Washington, and there was a negotiation going on outside the bus with the team president and the general manager of my network over the phone because that game in Minnesota was not scheduled to be on TV. So at the last second, they came up with a deal, struck a deal, agreed to terms, they would get a crew. So all of us that were working that game in Washington, we weren't scheduled to fly to Minnesota. I was because of radio, but nobody else was. So the players had to be told, look, we're now adding this game to the television schedule. We had to drive to the hotel. Now it's midnight. Our television crew had to run up to their rooms, pack their rooms, check out of their rooms, get back on the bus, go to the airport, and fly to Minnesota. And it was that kind of a thing where the players now realize that we were all in on this as well. And I don't think I'll ever experience anything quite like that streak in my life. And to see it happen to a guy like Brian is the greatest thing. He's just the salt of the earth, and I would have blocked a shot for him if I could have. So those are some of the
Wow.
memories on the ice.
Phenomenal.
On the ice.
I love it. Thank you. So, does this feel like a team leaving, or does it feel more like part of your identity being taken away?
Oh, to me, I pride myself in not letting my identity be the team that I cover, and I've covered every major sport in this town and college baseball, basketball, and football, and it's a slippery slope. You'll never hear me say we or us. It's just my thing.
Okay.
I now realize, based on some of the things that you've said to me and what I experienced with the high school group, that I will always be associated with that. So in my head, um, it felt like a part of me was leaving because I put so much into it, like anyone else would, that I would have my job. Um, I don't feel like it was my identity. I because I can't. I just don't go there with that.
Okay. Probably very healthy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Man, tough to do though. Very tough to do. Next
Yes.
one. How
Yes.
did it hit you emotionally? Not as a broadcaster, but as a man who poured his life into this. And we talked about this a tiny bit, but
I don't. I think I'm still figuring that out. I
okay.
went through all the stages that you could imagine. I was mad. I was sad. I was mad again and sad again. And tried not to be petty about it. I tried to explain to myself, this isn't, there's nothing you could have done to change that. That's like a natural feeling. So I don't know. I'm still figuring it out. It's my job, my role on television, the role that I have had and still have and with baseball has changed so much. I used to joke, there's a few guys in the league that we call ourselves dinosaurs. And I always say, I know when the meteor hit me. Um, so I guess I just kind of, I feel like I'm looking at it like someone that's worked for 30 years for a company and they said it was time to go, you know?
Okay.
And that's whether it's a hockey team or anything. I think I know I'm not alone in this.
Oh no.
That's a hard thing to process. And it's, I'm still processing it for
Well,
sure.
and that kind of leads into the next one. Have you given yourself space to grieve this? Because it's definitely grief
Yeah.
from the outside.
Yes. I learned from Shane Doan something. I've told this story and he's probably mad that I have, but there's two parts of this. When Shane never announced that he was leaving and retiring because he didn't think he was. And it put us in a really tough spot at the end of his last year. We didn't know what to do
Wow.
as a broadcast group. So I wrote an essay, called it an open letter to Shane Doan. And I mean, we worked so hard on it. There were people that spent hours and hours and hours in the edit bay putting this thing together and pulling up clips and highlights that were really hard to find. But it encompassed his story as a Coyote, and it was an open letter to him. And I just at the end I said, no matter what you do, I hope that you do what you want to do. And he told me at one point, it breaks my heart when my family goes skiing and I'm not on the lift. And I called his wife and she texted me photos of the family on a ski lift. I mean, that was the
Mm.
nuance that we put into this piece. So it aired three times during our last game, pregame, intermission, postgame. And it took off on the internet. And months later, when the Coyotes cut the cord with him, I got a text at like 11:30 at night. I was in the living room and it was him. And he said, "Do you have that piece? I'd like to see it." And I thought I knew where he was at mentally at that point, like it was over, and
Hmm.
he wanted to look at that. And I was honored by that. I mean, I love Shane Doan, and the experience of being with the Coyotes is, in lockstep with being around Shane Doan and his family, which is a whole other podcast. So if you take that moment where I think I knew how he felt, fast forward it to me in April of whatever year it was, then I was living it again.
Wow.
And I went and did an interview with him for our high school championship game. And before we started the interview, I said what I just told you. And he said, once you're out of that fraternity where you're not, I mean, he's talking about as a player, but I'm just talking about being in the day-to-day grind of a National Hockey League season for 28 years. You never get back.
Mm.
And but there's another part to this, if I could,
Hmm.
the concept of grief. And I think this is so important. In 2014, I got in a car accident. I had a concussion and I was not recovering in the normal way that they projected it to happen for me. I couldn't clear any hurdles. I couldn't clear any tests to go back to work. And I was getting really frustrated and scared. And I had an unbelievable neurologist. His name is Dr. David Dodick from the Mayo Clinic. He's from Canada. He's a hockey fan. And he watched Coyote games. And when I finally got in front of him, he said, I know who you are. I know how you work. And I'm going to get you back up to top speed. Okay. So I'm not recovering. I'm missing 90 Diamondbacks games. And he sent me to some experimental therapy. It wasn't working. So I went and talked to him. And I said, Doc, it's strange because I've given three eulogies in the last 5 or 6 weeks. And I feel like I did really well with them. And he stopped and he went, "What did you say?" I said, "Well, I've given three eulogies. My college roommate, my best friend, and my mom all died." And he literally closed his book and he said, "You're not healing because your brain won't let you heal because every time you come to the surface again, something horrible happens and you're hurting. You've got to find a way to grieve." So fast forward, end of answer. I lost another friend. Tom Curvers was my best friend, and he passed away tragically. And I did give a eulogy for him, but I also grieved. And it took me a year. I mean, anyone that's gone through this knows that there's no, playbook for it. But it helped me, and I applied that to this. I've grieved it
Yeah.
in a variety of ways, but I'm not hiding from it. I don't watch. I didn't watch one shift of their season. Don't have any desire to. That's my defense mechanism.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, I grieved it. But like at the very start of this, I found things that were of great strength for me as well by their departure. It's the only way I could survive it, right?
Hmm. No, totally. So in your quieter moments, off camera, off podcasts, off air, when we're not trying to figure out how to hear each other, which was me again, technical difficulties, what's your self-talk like? And what have you had to work through mentally through this process?
Um, my self-talk was that keep reminding yourself that you just did something extraordinary and something that you never would have believed that you did when you were 13 years old playing street hockey in the driveway of your home in Rochester, New York, dreaming of the Montreal Canadiens and your favorite hockey team in the American Hockey League, the Rochester Americans. If you had told me then that I would have gone soup to nuts and covering a national hockey team, I never would have believed it. So the self-talk and that one comes up a lot where I have to go, look what you did. You did, are you kidding me? You traveled all over North America. You traveled all over the world. You got to ski on off days in Lake Louise. Um, you flew on U2's plane once because they're Coyote charter. Oh, by the way, I'm not the only one that stole U2 pillows. In fact,
You borrowed. I don't
yes,
like, yeah, you didn't steal, you borrowed it.
we had to go back on the plane. We didn't think we'd ever fly it again. And head flight attendant came up and said, "We're missing 25 pillows and seat covers." But
Seat covers too.
yeah, oh, we got it all. I don't know. And the Coyotes brought the Miracle on Ice guys, and I got a chance to work with them and turn it into a huge project that I did with him which is mind-boggling. So I just keep trying to find those things, and there's so many more of them than just the loss. I mean, 28 years covering a team, 28 years in a job, 28 years on television and radio. That just doesn't happen. And
No,
I'm going to bore you again. The
no,
other
you're
night,
not.
I don't know what I'm going to owe you at the end of this. Bob Heathouse is one of my closest friends, and we're both hurting and hurting in different ways because of this. And we decided to go watch a playoff game. We watched one of the Toronto games, and we were sitting there, and I said, you know what? Some of our closest friends are working here tonight, that game. So I sent a text to Brad Treliving, the general manager of the Maple Leafs, and Shane Doan. I knew they were sitting right next to each other
Hmm.
and said, Heater and I are watching. Bob's like, they're not going to, they're going to, within minutes, both of them blasted our phones. So
Wow.
the night is wearing on. They go to the intermission, and there's Paul Bissonnette. And I go, Bob, that was our broadcast partner. I sent him a text. He's like, oh, busy. He's not, man, what are you
Yeah.
guys doing? So that game ended, and the next game came on, and we're still there talking. And the announcers pop up, and the color analyst of the next game was Brian Boucher. I said, Bob, here we go. And he's like, Bouch isn't going to respond. He's got to call color. I go, trust me. And he did. He blasted it and told me the Yankees.
Wow.
So, um, that kind of moment, like I was watching the game the other night and there was Matthew Tkachuk and Austin Matthews. I brought something over to Todd's garage. This did not go over well in certain circles, but they had me interview Austin Matthews before the draft, and I brought some ping pong balls that we put Coyote logos on. And I just said, "Can you just slide these into the?"
Just put give us a little better odds.
I just, there's still so many obtuse or direct connections that um, I have to be reminded. I can't go into a silo of despair. I mean, there's just so many gifts that like I said in the last broadcast, I mean, hockey gave me a purpose and gave me a platform, and um, that was the greatest gift. And if you are good to the game will be good to you. And I don't know if I can ask any more of it, right?
Wow.
So,
Yeah.
way that phrase right there, I have not uttered out loud until this second.
Wow.
So, thank you.
No, thank you, John. And
Yeah.
it's true. If you live in gratitude or your mind is in gratitude, it's impossible for it to be depressed or
Yes.
great. Yeah, it just that is that's I'm in recovery and that's something we talk about all the time. Be grateful for,
Yeah.
and then you don't get stuck in like all the stuff you don't have. Because
Yeah.
I'm the same way. If you would have
Yeah.
told me as a kid that my life would have happened the way it has, I would have got here. There's no way. Like never in a million years. But I
Yeah.
can get stuck easily and like well, this happened poorly or this didn't happen for me. But yeah.
Yeah. Well, you know what? I also feel like um, there's still ways to give back to the game too. That's one of the reasons I'm talking to you, talking to
Mm-hmm.
Terry, working with Kenny, and um, so those are all just a part of it. I, it's just a strange, very public bloodletting. But
Well,
you know what? I welcome it because it means to me also that what we were doing mattered, and I mean I know sports is a microcosm of life in so many ways, and um, yeah,
well,
I'm
I think honestly, Todd, and this is from messages I've got because I put a little thing out that we were going to do this, just a little teaser, and I have gotten messages from people that this will help them grieve
wow.
in a yeah, I mean, I could tell you some of the messages of people talking about how much they miss the team and have not really allowed themselves to think about it. Like some guy that these are strangers to me, but have become people I started talking to over the last couple of days, and I've got messages on different social media platforms saying um, that they just haven't dealt with it. I mean, literally, I had people message me and say they think about the team every single day. I mean, you think about that, like that is it's wild. And again, I don't think a lot of people realize that outside of maybe this community. So you doing this is giving back. I mean, it is giving to Tara, it's giving to me, to our youth organization, to the hockey community in general, though, here in Arizona, because I think a lot of people, you might not think you're the voice, but there's a very small group of people, and you've talked about them, that when people think Coyotes here locally, especially, it's Shane Doan, it's you, it's Biz. I mean, and I'm telling you, Todd, and that's that is reality. So this means a lot to a lot of people.
Well, I it's reciprocated. The thing that I think about sometimes is that we can't just go watch a game. You know what I mean? Like I would have accepted, hey, it's over, we're moving on. We're going to go to younger people or whatever they're going to do. Fine.
Mhm.
And I saw that I talked to Shane about this too, that over the years we'd be on the road and we'd bump into somebody that didn't play for the team anymore and they're out of the league and they'd show up at a morning skate and they had that look like I now know what that look was, but I just kind of wish, okay, the team's here. Maybe my time is done. It'd be great to go to a game. It'd be great to go to a morning skate and say hello to the equipment guys and the trainers and kind of feel that moment again, but it just wasn't in our cards.
Well, so we had season tickets for a long time, and I remember that one year, and I thought we were going to beat the Kings, and I had an RV dealership, and we took our staff in RVs to the game.
Yeah.
I went to every playoff game, And my older three boys all experienced the painting on the ice for the season ticket holders. I was just looking at pictures of this a few weeks ago because I'm going through all my old pictures. And my youngest Valentino, who is the reason we're doing this whole charity and how you and I are even talking, um, the only game he went to was against the Golden Knights at Mullet Arena, and we didn't know they were leaving. And he had never been to a Coyotes game yet. And but he never got that. I don't know why that's emotional to me. It just is. But yeah, he never got that experience that the other boys did. So it matters. We are definitely seeing that now in Arizona. So
Yep.
uh,
Yep.
how has your relationship with the game changed through this? Because I know hockey was, and I'm sure it's changed like maybe up and down since they left even.
Yep. I tried. Look, I understand pain and sorrow. I've had profound loss in my life, and I've learned how to sort of navigate it. In the sports world. I'll never watch an ASU U of A football game. I'll never watch ASU U of A basketball. I grew up a Yankee fan. This is going to sound bizarre, but
Oof.
when the Yankees are in, sorry, when the Yankees are in the playoffs, I, I only watch when they're batting. Why? Because nothing bad can happen. Only good things can happen. I swear to God. Okay, I'm
Okay,
out.
I have.
Okay? Just want you to know that.
Oh, I
So
love it. That is a real fan.
I just don't want. Why am I going to watch the middle reliever blow the game? But I'll watch the bottom anyways.
Oh, wow.
So the um, the thing that I did early on this year was like, look, I'm not gonna follow people on Twitter that are gonna be telling the story of this new team there. And I will say this, when I interviewed with them, and I probably shot myself in the foot. I said, look, I understand if you're not interested in bringing me there. I, I just did a 5 minute soliloquy about the power of hockey in Arizona. I mean, why would you want me? I understood that.
Yeah.
But I also said, you're going to be covering the coolest thing. Whoever has that job, I just did that in 1996. I remember, I have more props for you. I remember when they sent these out to the media. These were all these pucks that they were sending that before they had a name.
Oh,
Yeah,
wow.
the Moondoggies, the Goal Miners,
Moon doggies would have been interesting.
the dry ice. I
Oh,
remember
wow.
all that. I remember the street hockey tournaments and the total investment and the team practicing at Oceanside, but dressing at America West and driving across town on the freeway in their gear and all these fans looking at it.
Wow.
All so I remember all of that. And I thought, whoever does that job is going to have the coolest experience. I had it once. And but I also said, I'm not going to be watching this. Because and I love Utah, and I love Salt Lake City, and that would have been a dream, but it would have been a dream for the 35-year-old me, not where I'm at now. So my relationship with the game was weird. I turned my back on it, and so the benefit of that was I had a life in the wintertime and in the fall,
Hmm.
and I had time to be around people that I care about, that I love, who love me, and um, to just let things sort of happen naturally. I was frantic for a few weeks on trying to get a job. I had more coffees with people. I couldn't drink coffee for a month because I was going to coffees every 5 seconds. And I purposely shut it out. And the game came roaring back. And I watched one of the Four Nations games, and then I still kind of stepped away from it. But all these things that we're talking about now in this one session sort of appeared every now and then in my life, and I was like, oh man. And then I would text somebody that I had a relationship with in hockey, and my phone would blow up. And I was getting texts from people on crews that I worked with in other cities for years and years and years who said, hey, we miss you. And that was powerful. So I started to cultivate that and recultivate that and wished all those people well. And so the game came back, and I decided, this is hilarious. I decided to invest my emotion in the Toronto Maple Leafs.
Oh,
And now I am
oh,
obsessed with the coverage of this. And I've been on YouTube for 24 hours straight watching every post-mortem interview podcast, and I'm fascinated by it. And I'm so glad I'm not doing it, but I'm living it. So the game, I just, I turned my back on it because I had to because it hurt. And I'm okay saying that I'm not shy about it. But now it's a process, right? It's an evolution.
Well, I'll give you just a quick little tie-in for me with that. So I grew up in Canada. I played junior hockey for a couple of years and early, 16 years old, and I quit. And it was a mental health thing for me. I remember I was in Winnipeg with Barry Brust, who had a cup of coffee in the NHL and then went over to play in the KHL. We were at a camp in Winnipeg. There was Dallas Stars there, Calgary Flames, and my dad was there. And I walked out of the ring and said, "Dad, I quit. I can't do this anymore." Like I had been so engulfed in the game. And other than going to friends' first NHL games, I did not go into a hockey arena for over 10 years.
Mm.
And then a good friend of mine, Justin Bourne, moved down here. Whose dad Bob Bourne played in the NHL forever, and he moved down the street from me. And he said, and I hadn't seen him in 10 years. Talked to him. He said, "Hey, what are you doing? You should be playing hockey again." And he got me back out. And this game has given me so much again since then. But I went through it was hard because I was the reason I gave up on it. Um, but then once I started dealing with the gravity of it not being my life anymore, because it had been my entire that was my life, I couldn't deal with it. So I just avoided it like the plague. And then it circled back and now it's my life again and in a completely different way. And I would have never guessed that I would be involved in youth hockey the way I am doing
Yeah.
stuff like this. But the game has I talked to Theo Fleury about this. The game has saved my life more
Yeah.
than once,
Mm.
and if it wasn't for this game, I would not be here. That's a fact. So I don't know if you'll be able to answer this question much because, I don't know how involved you are, but have you seen what the ripple effect in youth hockey is here from the Coyotes leaving?
A little bit, and I fear how that will progress. And talking to Kenny McGinley and that gang, there's a very, I think, respectable and understandable concern for how it will trickle down that now that the head of the top of the mountain is gone in the state. So I think being proactive about it now is really important and understanding, for instance, that the new king of the hill is Arizona State University.
Hmm.
And this is coming from a U of A guy, but I think it's unbelievable what Greg Prowers has done with that program, the arena
Yes.
they built, and their name right now in the college hockey world is only going to grow, and the victories that they've put together and
Hmm.
all of all of that and the players that they're getting. So if you're thinking about how this is going to evolve now in the absence of the NHL, just recognize, kind of the pyramid of hockey here. But it starts with ASU. Support
Yep.
them. The games you find out that North Dakota's coming to town, get a ticket. Make sure that you're not having that ticket sold to somebody coming down from North Dakota. Do
It's a
the
great
exact
point.
opposite, right? So
Yep.
also that um, the U of A has programs. I think Grand Canyon does. I know
Hmm.
that NAU does at Jay Lively. So start there. And then the youth hockey that you talked about and the high school hockey that I was a part of was mind-boggling to me. And I felt so pure about it. I felt like I was at the purest form of hockey, which is why you can't get on a sheet of ice anywhere all day long, right? And
Hmm.
and I found out when I was trying to raise awareness of the high school championships, and the same thing with you guys. I told some beer league players about this,
Hmm.
and they were like running to be in line to get tickets to go to the game.
Yep.
Uh, so understand that these teams need your support, whether it's help for a traveling team or help for somebody getting money together to buy, a high school hockey package. I mean, these things cost money. I from October till March in my hometown, I had a hockey stick in my hand for
Hmm.
6 or 7 years of my life.
Hmm.
I couldn't afford to skate. My
Wow.
parents could not. I had hand-me-down skates from the 60s. Well, that I lived it. I get it. And so to me, I've seen it a little bit. I think we're at the very beginning of it now. And if we can sort of focus in on things that matter. Maybe we can circumvent that and build the understanding that there's plenty of places to go watch hockey, enjoy hockey, support hockey. And if you're into hockey, you know that it's the greatest thing on earth. And
Oof. Amen. It
yeah,
really is.
yeah,
So I guess leading into that, do you worry, and I'll just use my kid as an example, Tino, do you worry that someone like him wouldn't have as direct, obviously, or even a path to the NHL if, especially if we don't correct course? Because I mean, I guess that's the crux of it, right?
yeah,
Like
yeah,
if we
yeah.
correct course, then yes. But if we go back to pre-Coyotes or early Coyotes, even it's
Yes, and I think, look, it fascinated me that 20 plus years after the Coyotes came to town, all of a sudden we were putting lists together, full page graphics on television of players that were born in Arizona or
hmm
grew up in Arizona. And it's a direct result of the National Hockey League being here. Players brought their families here. They raised their kids here. And now that vessel is gone, right?
hmm
But I still think it goes back to just understanding what's left. And that's the collegiate hockey scene and all that we just detailed. But in 10 years, that path is going to be really hard. I think it's the next wave after your
hmm
son, it's obviously. So, yeah, correct course. I love what you said about that.
yeah.
Absolutely. Figure it out that there's a alternative method because look, youth hockey, you know it, you live it.
hmm
There are teams, travel teams that are coming back with championships, trophies, not participation trophies, but
No,
doing really well.
state and national championships.
Yes. And
Yes.
that's recognized and that needs to be fostered. And um, I just think that the one thing that I fear is this astronomical beast called NIL is changing the
Mm.
whole scope of everything
Yep.
in college and collegiate sports, intercollegiate sports. I don't know what the fallout is of that at the end. Where's the money going to come from to support a charity or an event like yours
hmm
or whatever? So, man, these are important decisions that are going to be made now, right now, I think.
So, and I'm gonna, and I'll probably catch some heat for what I'm about to say now, but that's okay. I've coached at a few different of the youth travel organizations over the years, and I'm gonna shout out now to every single one of them. And not Kenny again, that Osh is a whole different beast, but I'm talking about the travel programs. Now is the time to work together
Yeah.
because it is not a competition. Our job is to develop youth hockey players, and all roads lead to beer league. Even NHL players play beer league. But our job, it's true, all roads lead at some point. It all leads to beer league. But and I keep. I'm very invested in the one I'm at. We're trying to develop a unique program, but I also have a good friend that works for the for Kaha that is on Kenny Krupp. And we all need to work together because it is not a competition if we want this to work. What's going to happen is we are going to not develop hockey players because we're all trying to get the next Austin Matthews, which comes around once every 100 years. I mean, I
Right.
don't even know what the number is. So like just worry
Yep.
about developing the game and the kids, and it's not about the money. And again, I'm probably going to catch some flack from some people on this, and they're going to be upset that I called them out. But and this was not intentional. This is just as we're talking about it that the way to make this continue to grow is to work together, not go against each other.
I stand in your corner and I kind of parachuted into the high school hockey world. And I've been aware of the different camps. Let's
hmm
just
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it.
and then when I started talking to players about where they were playing and what they were doing, and that there has to be an inevitable what you're just talking about. It has to, or it won't survive.
hmm
It, Something's going to go away. So, my God, keep going with that.
Yeah,
People do need to. You don't want to cut off your nose to spite your face, right?
yeah, yeah. And then that's exactly what happens. It's very short-sighted.
Yep. Yep.
Do you think during while they were here, and I guess maybe immediately after, did the Coyotes really understand as an organization their impact on hockey in Arizona. I'm not talking from, again, not from the NHL level and the fans. I'm talking about the kids like my kids. Did they really grasp how important that was and what it meant? And I guess I'll just follow up with, do you think that knowing that or not knowing that they tried hard enough to keep that here from that standpoint? Because I know it's a business and I get all of that, but it was bigger than that for this community.
Well, over the arc of their entire existence, and this is just my opinion from at times being up close and personal. I think there were times when, yes, they did, especially the first wave, because the league mandated that there was an understanding that you've got to populate, put rinks up or help put rinks up, roller rinks, whatever you can do, street hockey events, all of that stuff. And they did. And but that group left and another group came in, and there was a period of entitlement that I thought was so damaging because the first group, I used to say they were like Avis Rent-A-Car. They tried harder for everything. And you got to remember when they were at America West Arena, they couldn't even put up signage. They had to do portable setups. And that's also a part of the long-term story of their demise. But then another group came in and started to just act like, it's Tuesday night and Nashville's in town and well, it's the National Hockey League and people should come to games. Well, that blew up in their face.
Yes.
And then they, started raising tickets for specific games like the Red Wings games, which
Mm,
they frankly destroyed the rivalry because they cut out the people that could afford the tickets, which were their fans.
yeah.
That's a part of what you just asked. Was this
Hmm.
so there were people that I think throughout the years that were deeply invested in it, not enough because they couldn't. And I think at the end, that group was just doing lip service to it, and there were people that cared deeply, and obviously, when I think of Matt Schaaf's the first name that comes to my mind.
Oof.
Um, but in the end, I felt like there was a lot of lip service and not a true commitment or understanding, and that's heartbreaking because I mean, they're the standard bearer, right? They need
Hmm.
to be that, and they weren't. I just. Just so many swings and misses over the years. I remember Austin Matthews' first game. I think it was a 4-goal game, wasn't it? And
Hmm.
we were doing an event at the Ice Den for Fox Sports, and there's like a few hundred people sitting there, and we had a player there, and his game was on the TV screen, and I just thought, man, this kid skated here and every other
Hmm.
ice in town, and he's got 4 goals,
Goals.
and
And for the Maple Leafs, which again, like,
yeah. So I don't have a specific answer because I was never in all the meetings, but I just felt like there was more to do. How's that?
yeah. And I think as fans, that's probably how we all felt. And that's why I think at the end, it was so hard
Yeah.
because, other than just everything else, I mean, I had a conversation with someone yesterday about this, and they were like, "Do you think he even cared?" And I'm not going to say name, but like, do you think he even cared? And I mean, that's the common thing. So you don't have to answer that one if you don't want to, but yeah, that was, yes. So on that
But
note, do you think hockey will ever turn here? Or sorry, go ahead. Yeah,
I, my answer to that is I hope the folks that are still grinding their gears about the voters in Tempe back off that for a minute, tap the brakes on that.
okay.
I feel like that's not what this country is all about. We're not supposed to be chastising voters. That's
No.
one of the most sacred rights, right? But I don't think for a minute there were people in Tempe that were voting against hockey.
Mm,
They were voting against
hmm.
something else.
Hmm.
And
Oh yeah. Hmm.
I feel like that might be a better way to think about that than to think that, well, the voters in Tempe just, well, no, 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 no.
No, no,
It should have
no.
never come out of that to begin with.
Yeah, that shouldn't have been the last
No.
hitch. Like it should have never gotten to that point. Agreed.
Anyways, I cut you off. I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. You're fine. I love it. So, do you think we will ever get NHL hockey here again?
Um, I, I do. I don't. I can't. There's a lot of people that are thinking it's going to be in a couple of years, and I
Yeah, I
can't
don't that I don't think.
feel that. I do. It's too big of a market. They've returned to Winnipeg. I mean, Atlanta's knocking on the door again. I mean, I don't.
For the third time.
Yeah, right. I was a Dan Bouchard fan. I don't know. I do think so. Um, I don't think it's going to be as easy as anyone thought. Yeah, still have to dig a hole. Got to dig a hole.
I think it's going to take an exceptional person
Mhm.
to see that. And I have no idea who that is, obviously,
No,
but I
no.
think it's going to take somebody who, and it might be somebody who grew up here, and it might be somebody who grew up here and for whatever reason gets a ton of money and decides that this is passionate for them and brings a team back, and that could take 10 or 20 or 30 years. I mean, but it's not going to be two or three or four or five. I don't
No,
think. No,
no.
no, no, no. That's no hope. So, um, you've always told a great story. If you were writing the final chapter of the Coyotes and AZ, how would it end?
Sorry to say this, but that book has already been written. That
Yeah.
chapter already been written. It's already in paperback. However, I love The Godfather and I love Godfather 2, and sequels are always tricky, but sometimes they just hit home runs. And I, I see the sequel starting with a picture.
Hmm.
And the picture is, we've seen this photo before in certain instances, but it's a bunch of dignitaries and maybe a politician that we sort of recognize, and they're all standing there and they're wearing hard hats. And then there's a guy there that maybe you're talking about that has fallen into money or created a massive fortune. And he's from Arizona. And he's got a big smile on his face. And the other guy in that photo is Shane Doan, and they're all
Mm.
holding shovels because they're all doing that, the photo op for the groundbreaking ceremony. That
Wow.
to me is chapter one or the picture of the sequel to the Coyotes.
I love
And
it.
if that happens, does Utah have the Coyotes' history? Did they take that with them?
Mm. I don't think
They don't.
so.
Okay.
No.
So
Mm.
it's there's this the whole Winnipeg thing
Yeah.
just confused
Yeah,
me.
I know. No, I don't believe so. I don't believe so.
No, I think it's Shane Doan who
Yeah.
I just, every day I remember I said this to somebody pretty high up the old pyramid of the NHL that, every day that is Shane Doan is involved in hockey in Arizona is another day further from him being involved in hockey in
Mm.
Arizona. And um, it just feels like that's his destiny.
I love
I
it.
hope.
I love it. Me too. Me too.
Yeah.
What's your next chapter look like? And how can we, as the hockey community, support you in that? Because that's what we do. That is
Oh,
what we do.
my chapter. I
Yeah.
don't know. You know what? I had to, I know I'm not alone. I know I'm not alone. I had a year-round job. So for the first time in my life, for 6 months, I didn't have a paycheck. I've never been like that. So I was trying to figure out, I am actively trying to figure out what to do as long as I still have baseball, since you asked.
Hmm.
I'm trying to figure out what to do from October till March.
Mm.
I've had a number of people inquire about things. I've inquired about things, and I don't feel like podcasts or streaming services, when they tell you that um, it's great to have you, but they can't pay you, I find that to be rather. So I'm trying to figure. I hope and pray that Kenny will have me back in some capacity next year, and that could turn into something because I fell in love with it. I fell in love with the spirit of it. Um, but I'm almost to the point now where I'm trying to figure out if there's something that I can do and lend my experience to and my skill set to that doesn't necessarily have to be in the sports world. I would love to have something
Okay.
that I can do, and it goes all the way back to the start of this conversation. I just don't know where this thing ends up, right? And
Hmm.
I think for a few months I was numb. I was grieving. And then worked for the hockey folks and had a blast. And then it's like, okay. And someone said to me the other day, you don't sit well with not being active. Like, no, I love doing nothing. But I I want to do something else before my chapter is done, and I don't
Okay.
know what. So if your folks have any ideas, man, I'm all
Oh,
ears.
I'm sure we will. Like youth hockey director of Arizona.
Okay, sure. Come
Yeah.
on in.
Okay. Yeah. So all
I don't know.
right.
You
Yes,
asked. That's as honest of an answer as I can get. I
I
don't
love.
know. I know that I'm still hungry. I love what I do. I love my job with the Dimebacks. I'm having a blast, and I'm able to put all of it, all of me into it, not fragmented from just doing 82
Mhm.
hockey. So I'm pretty jazzed. But I don't feel my age yet.
Um, okay, a couple more, and then I'll wrap it up kind of with my sense or my side of how this all came together,
Yeah.
which is kind of ties into you know how how I believe this came together, and also how much the hockey community rallies. Um, what's your last save moment? Since this is called the last save, and in this instance, what's the thing you held on to when everything could have slipped away? Whether it was now that doesn't have to be Todd. That could be this experience. That could be you talked on the last broadcast some of the losses you've had, and how the Coyotes were there for you at that time. So what is something that you held on to when it could have gone drastically different?
I have two
Okay.
that I think about. One is when I ran away to Arizona, the University of Arizona in 1983 as a transfer student. I had a dream of playing baseball there. And when I walked over to see their fall practice, I immediately chickened out. They were men, and I was not yet. So I was in dire straits. Then I had a grave miscalculation in how much money I had available. My school that I spent a year at in New York, everything was included. The cafeteria was in the dorm. I just gave them my ID and I ate. And then I come out to Arizona and I realized the first night that my room and board were dramatically different. I had $400 left to my name. I sold baseball cards to drive across country to get gas. The cavalry was not coming. My mom and dad weren't wealthy by any means. So I got a job working at Noodles and Crust Pizza, not making pizza. I washed dishes from 10 p.m. till 2 a.m. And then I started to sell my plasma twice a week. And that was
Wow.
I just hit I was 19 years old and laying on a gurney going, what am I doing? And I knew that my dream was to be a broadcaster. It was all I ever wanted to do. So the day that I went to the baseball stadium and panicked and ran away from that sport, I walked into McHale Center, knocked on the door of the basketball office, and said, "Do you need an announcer?" I must have looked like I'd been homeless for 20 years by that point. And the secretary, she just looked at me and she said, "Well, we just hired a new coach and we're putting together a staff. Some of it's pay, some of it's scholarship. Why don't you talk to this assistant coach?" So I did. And he called me back a week later. And then he called me, I think, a week after that and said, "Congratulations, you're part of Lute Olson's first ever staff.
Oh,
You'll wind, you'll wind up on a full scholarship. Um, you'll be traveling at the end of your career. You'll need to help hire a staff. We need to reimburse you
wow.
for the state tuition. We need to put all your classes together before practices. You'll eat pregame meal and you'll be able to get on training table for food, and we'll give you a credit card with money on it." So, the first team meeting is tomorrow. And I wound up sitting on the bench next to Little Olson at Poly Pavilion in my senior year with John Wooden across the way from me and Reggie Miller on the floor, and Sean Elliott and Steve Kerr beat the Bruins for the first Pac-10 championship. And I began to launch my career because of all of that. My message to everybody about that time in my life is uh, don't ever run away from your goals.
Mhm.
Don't ever leave them. There's a reason why they are in your head, and proximity matters to everything. There's a
Mhm.
story to that. That's the one thing that I have always held on to is that I survived that moment and I put myself in the right place and stayed there and learned a work ethic that I'll never ever let go of. Fast forward to the Coyotes coming to town. And, me being the rock and roll DJ that landed this pregame show on the radio, I had a mullet and didn't wear a suit and tie. And I just was doing things my own way. And there's a certain way that hockey exists in my business. And I was doing it differently. I was doing it as a storyteller. We didn't talk about the power play. We talked about, Shane
Mm,
Doan taking us to the Lion King on Broadway and making sure that he got tickets for everybody that were on the aisle so we could experience the march of the animals. I mean, those are the stories I was telling. And I think I got under the skin of the general manager and maybe the PR folks. And during this Blues series, my friend Tom Kerbers, who was rapidly becoming my best friend, heard some chatter about, gotta get rid of this guy. And he took the general manager aside and said, "You got it all wrong. He's in your corner. You got this one wrong."
mm,
And then he came to me and said the most powerful words I've ever heard. He said, "Make yourself invaluable and do not let them imagine what life is like without you." And it took me a while to implement all of that, but I took that to heart because I never wanted to lose that job with the Coyotes in the National Hockey League.
mm.
And what I took from that was loyalty of Tom to go out of his runway and throw a block for a friend and a colleague that he knew what I was doing. And the other thing is, just don't piss it away. You have an unbelievable gift, and you have a gift that you were given as a broadcaster. Don't throw it away. Don't be an idiot. And I'd like to think that that was my save.
I like it.
Big
I
ones.
love I love it. So yeah, I'm gonna tell a quick couple stories on, and then I want to thank some people, and then I got one last ask of you before I get you off. It's a surprise that you're not.
Okay.
So, and this kind of tells the story of how different the hockey community is. So I'm doing this charity event with Eddie Lack, former goaltender in the NHL. It's on lackcan'tscore.com, and there's a lot to it. And the amount of people that are coming to this and participating in this event, from influencers to professionals to current ASU players, I mean, it is rallying like I could not believe. And this was 2 weeks ago, nothing. This was just an idea. So how that came about was, I'll make this quick. And there's some very key people in this story. So my son Valentino had made the Knights, the HU Knights, and then he ended up in the ICU at Phoenix Children's Hospital. And I get a text, and I don't know the number, and it's Eddie Lack, and we had a mutual friend, and he did a video to Tino saying, "Hey," and I am going to get emotional through this process. I'm just going to warn everyone now, because I can't tell the story without. And so he says, "Hey Tino, goalie to goal, you're going to get through this. We're buddies now. When you get out of the hospital, we're going to hang out and all this stuff." So I thanked him, and he started with like, "You probably don't know who I am," because but I played in the NHL. And so Valentino's favorite team was the Devils. Don't ask me why, other than he likes the colors. And I said, "Eddie, thank you so much. That meant a lot to him." And he goes, and then I get a text message, a video from Jesper Bratt from the Devils saying, "Tino, I'm at training camp. You're going to get through this, buddy." Uh, and I don't think other sports do that. I just don't. I don't. So then, fast forward, he makes it through. We're practicing. Eddie comes out to practice, surprises all the kids. They love him. And then I start with a mutual friend who never has played hockey before. Tina gave Eddie a gift. He drew him a picture, and it was just an amazing moment for him and for me, and I hope for Eddie too. And Eddie and I have become very close through this process. And so we had a group chat with a friend who's never played hockey before after that practice. And we're trying to get him to put goalie pads on. And we're like, "Hey, put goalie pads on. We'll pay you to put goalie pads on. We'll shoot at you." And he hadn't responded. And me and Eddie were just continuing to go. And they said, "Eddie, I'll put goalie pads on and stop you. No problem." And, that's the ego in me. And he's like, and keep in mind, Eddie was a goaltender, but when he plays in the Scottsdale Men's League, he leads it in scoring. So he's like, okay at, yeah, he's okay at the other part too. So he
I
goes,
get it.
I'll go 5 for 5. You won't stop one. And I go, "Man, the best guys in the world don't hit the targets 5 for 5. Like it's something." So, and I played hockey and then I'm on the ice a lot. So I'm like, "I'll be okay." So he says, "Okay, let's bet. Put your money where your mouth is, $500." And I go, "No problem." And I say, "You know what? We don't need the money, right? Like the $500, we're all both okay. Why don't we donate the money to charity? We'll just do a bet and we'll give it to charity." And I said, so mine is puck support, Brady up in Canada, mental health hockey. does amazing work. And he goes, well, mine's Canucks for kids. I'm going to Vancouver for a game. Why don't I just come pick up the check right now? Because you're going to lose. So then we started into this, like him shooting out. Man, we were going to do it last year. And then, everyone got busy and, it never happened. And so we kind of revisited this idea a couple of weeks ago, but I'll backtrack before a couple of weeks ago. And this is again, like someone who's super important to me. So throughout the season last year, there were some tumultuous times with the team, and there was a coach that I'd never met before, and his son Jensen Billings is my son's best friend, and Drew Billings is his name. And I got asked to take the team over, and probably a month ago or so, I called Drew and I said, Drew, I can't do this. Like I got to give you the team. Like I can, and that's a whole story why. And he said, Ryan, don't. Like we need you. Like that you don't do this. Just give it another day. Give it one more day. And had he have not done that, he could have easily said, "Yeah, man, I'll take the team over. Take time." And he was like, "No, like you need this, Ryan." And so I did. So and that's then I asked Tara to be the team manager, who reaches out to you. So then through that process of deciding, okay, we're going to do this charity event, and which is blown up huge. There's a couple guys, Cole and Destin, and I don't even remember how I knew them. They put me in touch with Theo Fleury. And Theo is obviously big in the same things I am, mental health and substance abuse prevention. And he, I asked his wife, Elle, if we could do something like this, just talk, right? And to promote for the charity. And we decided, well, we're going to make episode one of a new podcast. Like this is just totally on the fly. And so I tell my story and he tells his story a little bit. And my dad watches it. And I have had an estranged relationship with my dad, and I mean, and he would be okay with me saying this. We have not talked much in the last 8 years, and he reached out to me, and we're crying again. So that is the gift that this has given me is repairing my relationship with my dad. Um, so I thank Theo, and he got emotional, and and then and now here you are. Yeah, so this whole thing has been incredible, and. Whew, yeah, so I want to thank a few people like Tara, yourself, Theo, Destin, Cole, Drew, all the coaches, Kyle, Kenny, uh, Sean, Danny. I hope I don't miss anybody right now. Lori, Enzo, Antonio, Nico, Tino, and Eddie, obviously. Yeah, so on that note, I want to ask you, I was going to ask you, and I just thought of this as we're talking. The most famous part of your farewell speech for me is the chalkboard talk. And I wondered if you could kind of just, I don't want to say recreate it, but kind of tell everyone if they haven't seen that, what that was, and, put the same or a new spin on it and what you said. And then, thank you again, Todd. This has been incredible. Yeah.
Well, first of all, what you just described is a gift that this community just keeps giving. I literally didn't know who you were or Tara was a week ago. And I just did something I've never done in my life, which is let anybody interview me. I've been on for
Really?
oh my God, no. I'm
Oh,
not,
wow.
but when you sent me over your game plan for it, I was like, oh my God. Like I actually asked myself, how did you get in my head?
Wow.
You know that. And now I know. Um, so I'm a huge 70s child of the 70s, and the first villain in my hockey world was the Philadelphia Flyers, Broad Street Bullies, and my first hockey cards are the early 70s. And I just remember I feared the Philadelphia Flyers before the Canadians got their dynasty back up and running. And so Fred Shuro was, he was the Wizard of Oz, right? And I just had remembered the story of what he said the night before or the night of the game for them to clinch their first of the back-to-back Stanley Cups, where they where he walked up to the chalkboard and said, "We win tonight, we walk together forever."
Mm.
And I told that story, the first couple of years of Coyotes hockey, I was telling Indigenous stories to every single city we went to. And it was the most glorious experience of my broadcasting career. It was so cool. And I remember going to Philadelphia for the first time and I interviewed Gene Hart. And he just regaled me with stories. And I got in the elevator and there's Bobby Clark. Like, oh God. So as the years went by, I sort of adopted that phrase because I just think it's so true. And I was around a World Series championship team in 2001 with the Diamondbacks. And um, I was part of a basketball team that won a conference championship. And it just touched me so deeply. We walk together forever. You don't have to win, but when you win, we walk together forever. So I was trying to think of a way to say goodbye to the Coyotes. And the hard part of it was that we weren't supposed to say goodbye. And that was
Mm.
part of my big dilemma of going to the rink that day. I was, you know, I, that year I worked for the team because my network was bankrupt. So I took a lot of things that I never would have ever had to absorb. And I didn't really know how I was going to end it. And some people thought that I would memorize a script. Well, this is my game sheet that I wrote in the third period. It starts with summer of '96.
Wow.
And then it gets to the story about Temple Newman and my mom. And then I realized it wasn't supposed to be a soliloquy. It was supposed to be a group talk. I wound up being the only person on the set. And I remember letting it go as we were showing live shot after live shot after live shot. And Andre hadn't come to the room yet to talk to the media. And it was like, Tyson changed the whole tone of our whole broadcast because we had a specific marching order. It's still not really done yet. And I wrote this very ambiguous tease and show open. Tyson came out there. This feels like a funeral. That changed the whole dynamic. Thank God. And thank you, Tyson. So I had my couple of producers and editors that I'd worked with, and I said, I just had this dream of ending the broadcast and my portion of it with the original chalkboard that Fred Sherrill wrote. And then can you morph it into a Coyotes? And they did that for me. And I knew that's what I wanted to do. And I did it. And something something happened after that I'll never forget. And if you'll give me a second,
Mhm.
I have not deleted one text from that night,
Wow.
not one.
Holy.
And they helped me. But I got a text from Fred Sherrill's son, Ray Sherrill. And this ties into Arizona hockey. I'll find it somewhere in here. But he found out what we did in honor of his dad, and then he saw it online, and he was blown away. And the part that I'm going to read you what he wrote, if you don't mind.
No, not at all.
Um, he said, "I'm thrilled to learn about." Oh, that's the wrong one. Yeah, this is it. This is from Fred Sherrill's son, Ray. "I wanted to express my gratitude for including my father's famous line, 'Walk together forever,' in your heartfelt tribute to the fans of the Coyotes hockey team in the Arizona market. Your tribute not only honored the fans, but also paid tribute to my father's legacy. The inclusion of his words has made a profound impact and has touched the hearts of many. The sentiment behind 'Walk Together Forever' perfectly captures the enduring spirit of unity and camaraderie that the Coyotes and the Arizona market represent. Once again, thank you for your thoughtfulness. Your tribute will forever hold a place in our hearts and the hearts of Arizona hockey." Uh, so when Kenny McGinley called and asked about helping his project out, I said I wanted to do some interviews, some Zooms to promote it. And one of the people that I called was Ray. And I told him that I was going to adopt Walk Together Forever for their whole championship run. And he agreed to come on and talk about it. And he told me some great stories about it. and he wanted us to take pictures and send video of the championship game. And then he succumbed to cancer a couple of months after that. And I'm just so honored to have been able to have him be a part of this whole thing and to sprinkle that moon dust over Arizona hockey. And I can't believe he's gone. So that's the story of it. It was burned in my head as a kid, and I cultivated it more than once, and I'll never ever forget it. And I'll say to Ray Sherrill, we walked together forever. That's the story.
Well, thank you, Todd. This is literally, I can't, I mean, this is one of those moments where you're going, did this just happen? And I know people are going to love it. And I did think of one person that I should thank because he's been helping me out. And it is the guy I took the team over from, Rob Fido. Rob Fido has been amazing. He's helped me even set up this because I have no idea how to do any of this. So, Rob, thank you. I wish, he was I'm going to tease him right now because I'm trying to figure this out. And he's always available for me, which is crazy. And then the one time he's not, he's at his son's preschool graduation. And he goes, Hey, sorry, first one in the family to graduate preschool. I got to be here.
I didn't know there
So
was a preschool
I
graduation.
think that's why it's the first one. But yeah, so big shout out to Rob. You've been amazing. And if I forgot about anybody else, so we are doing June 17th, 7 p.m. It's turned. It was originally just raising money for puck support, Canucks for kids, and for youth hockey. And it has turned into just it's a celebration of hockey. Like this is again where the hockey community is rallying. The Matt Shaw Foundation reached out to me. People are starting to hear about it and reach out. So spread the word, latcan'tscore.com. Tickets are on sale now, and it all goes to charity. It's all for a good cause, and it just really it's one of those times that hopefully, and this isn't intentional, but talk about what we talked about, like we can rally together. We can all show ourselves and everyone else that this does matter to us still, that hockey is still important, and we need a win. We need a win. I'm not going to say names, but a couple people in the hockey community from different areas have that were tied to this group that said, like, we're all in because we need a win. Like, this is the biggest hockey story here in a
Yep.
while. And so, which is wild again to think that this is happening. And Eddie, sorry for dragging you in. Just kidding. He's all in. But he was like, when I told him we were going to do this, he's like, I'm really busy. And I was like, it won't get that big. We'll just do a small little thing,
Little
but
thing,
just a
yeah.
little thing, just a little
Yeah.
thing. And then two
Uh-huh.
days later, he's like, I knew you were going to do this. I know you. That's why we're friends. But I hate you right now.
I
So
love
yeah,
it.
yeah. Thank you again, Todd. And I will meet you soon.
Listen, Ryan, this is an honor, and I want to start connecting names to faces with
Okay.
handshakes and hugs, and I will be ironically in Toronto for a Coyotes Diamond, or, excuse me, geez,
Blue
Diamondbacks,
Jays.
yeah,
Yeah,
Diamondbacks
there.
Blue Jays game. But please send me some pics and some
I
videos of
will.
that, and I I I want to be a part of this that you're
Okay.
talking about. I want to be
Good.
that. I want to be a part of that. I want to see that happen here. And I
Okay.
understand places, but this was an honor and a thrill. And I, I don't know how to thank you for this, but I think I'm
No.
going to be thanking you for quite some time.
Thank you, Doug. Me too. All right. We'll talk soon.
Thanks, Ryan.
Bye.